All right, back again. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Let me just go ahead and check settings real quick. Make sure that we are good. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Looks good. All right. Hello, hello. Everything looks good on my end. If there is any buffering or weirdness going on, do try refreshing the chat. Usually works, but should be clear. It is also snowing like crazy, so weather is a little bit abrupt, but everything's looking good so far. So we're gonna run with it. And I usually like to allow just a minute or so to let people come in, get situated, uh, get some questions rolling. But since we've already got a number of people that are here and a bunch of really good questions being asked so far, I'm going to go ahead and jump in today because with the back-to-back lives, it is going to be a little bit of a shorter live Q&A, but I'm excited to dive in. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here for another Sunday edition of Live Q&As where we hang out, we talk about the law, and as always, my aim is to help you with clarity and understanding so that you can take these teachings and apply them to your life. Not a whole lot as far as announcements or anything is concerned. As always, if you're interested in any of my resources, more information about my one-on-one coaching to get on the wait list, all that, you can check it out in the description box. I am still trying to get caught up on emails as quickly as possible after I was out of the office for a few days, ill, just about caught up. So again, appreciate everybody who has been patient and understanding with me, but again, making sure that that all gets caught up today as well. So I'm feeling much, much better, pretty much back to 100. So without further ado, I think that was everything. Just check my notes really fast. Yes, I believe that was everything. So without that said, let's go ahead and jump on in. All right. Oh, PP Tan. Hi, Missy. I've been feeling so lost lately. I keep going back and forth between giving up on SP and persisting. Any advice? And I know it's the 3D getting to me that is causing the back and forth, but I feel lost and hopeless. And I am so sorry that first, genuinely, I am so sorry. I know that this journey can take everything out of us. And I think first, just know that you're not alone in how you feel. I think every single person that has been on this SP journey can relate to the feelings of hopelessness, that feeling of lost. This is normal. This is normal to have good days and bad days and ups and downs. A lot of these teachings are a radical new way of thinking. So we're learning to implement things that we are not conditioned at all to do. We have been thoroughly conditioned for years, if not decades, to think and act and assume things a certain way. So countering that can feel really, really challenging, naturally. Number one, and I think the most important thing is first, do what you feel you must do for you. We must prioritize our mental health and well-being, as in if it feels like you are becoming like if any of the stress or anything is feeling exacerbated by all of this, if you need to take a break, you can take a break. If you need to take a moment to just help yourself decompress, help yourself, take some R&R time, you can absolutely do that. I do encourage that. I'm not saying to give up on your desire. Never going to try to recommend that to people, of course, but if we need to have a moment to just recharge our batteries, we can do so, and we should, because we have to prioritize our well-being above anything else. There's no getting around that. Um, I know it can feel like a lot of back and forth because we are conditioned to the 3D. I know that dealing with the 3D circumstances is arguably the most difficult part of all of this. Like remaining faithful to what we are imagining and what we are assuming despite the 3D circumstances is the biggest challenge in all of this. And it is something that will come through this practice, through the form of building faith in yourself, in the law, as in you as the operant power. But that doesn't always feel very strong. It doesn't always feel very, at times we're going to question that or we're going to doubt that. That is normal. To be abundantly clear, persistence does not mean pushing yourself past a point of exhaustion or trying to will it into being. Persistence just means that we don't want to give up entirely on understanding that everything is created from you. Everything in this world that we experience, everything in our reality is the outpicturing of our concept of self. I just came back from doing lesson 4 of Neville's 5 lessons, Know When to Change But Self, where that point is really strongly emphasized over and over again. So my advice would be, number 1, take care of you. You have to prioritize yourself and your well-being, and that means if you have to give yourself even a couple days, whatever that may look like, to just recharge, not have to worry about any of this trying to manifest stuff, then do that. And really, once you are feeling better, once you can direct your attention back to your self-concept, then let that be your priority. As in, coming back to the imagining that you are however and whatever you want to experience. Emphasis on you. This is how you want to be. This is how you want to feel. That is what the objective is here. Yeah. You're not alone in this, and you will overcome this. You guys are so sweet. Hello, so many wonderful faces in here. Northwest Wind, hello. Part 1, is it natural for the fullness of my desire to take time to set with my person in romantic union, but she's still overcoming mental health? Well, my main desire, her full happiness, is still setting in. I'm deepening the infinite love practice even more by seeing her as whole and complete, and also a reflection of infinite love. Any tips for finalizing her highest happiness/faith? Thanks so much. That is absolutely beautiful. Northwest Wind, that is beautiful, and you are a beautiful person. Um, really, with the emphasis on infinite love and your biggest desire being the complete fullness and happiness of your person, and seeing her in that light, seeing her in that state. It is a beautiful thing to see. And as far as finalizing her highest happiness and faith, I would say with whatever ways that you are imagining, if it feels like there's any areas of resistance, if it feels like there may be double-mindedness anywhere, and maybe this isn't the case, maybe not. But if that is maybe what's happening, or you're, noticing reaction to the 3D and some of that old story with her mental health, uh, make sure that you are emphasis on revising any, anything that shows up in the 3D related to that old story, so that you are, not overlooking, changing in your mind, changing the episodes as they may be, what she tells you. If it's not ideal, if it's not that state, not overlooking the revising aspect. And then it really is just the continuing to come back to that state of unconditional love, of infinite love, and seeing your person in that highest light. But really, I think most importantly, if there is ever confirmation, 3D confirmation whether that's her expressing, not doing well, not feeling well, that old story, not overlooking the revising aspect, which again, maybe that is what you are doing, but just to make sure to emphasize that point. But you have such a beautiful way with words and you are such a beautiful soul. And I am really, really happy to see that the how far you have come on this journey is amazing to watch. Tammy, yes. Yes, I did just see that this morning. Absolutely. And I will be going through emails this afternoon as well. Hey, Missy, I'm currently manifesting my dream job, and I'm gradually feeling more disconnected from my current job. It's almost feeling like a dream in itself. Is this a sign I'm on the right track? hmm Yes, absolutely. That's what we want to see. It is sort of a feeling of disconnect from the current state or the current 3D state. So in your example, um, the job that you are currently at, just feeling more of a disconnect from it and more of a connection to that desired outcome where you would rather be itself. And it actually does quite feel like a dream. Yeah. Yeah. I do have a video coming out talking more about dreams. I realize that that's a topic that I haven't really covered that much and should and need to. So, but yeah, what you're describing is absolutely indication. It's all in how you feel. It's all in how you're naturally thinking, naturally reacting. What you're describing, 100% how we want to be feeling. Hello, Marie. Hello, gorgeous. To have you here. Hi, Missy. I feel like I can't manifest multiple things like job and health, etc., because the health goal is not that successful and it feels like it throws back my other manifestations. I mean, if I only imagine health for myself, then I am more successful with that, but can't seem to progress in other areas. How to address this? Mm, yeah, I'm sorry, Victoria. And I know that this can seem challenging to have multiple things that we are aiming for and that we want to see change. If it feels like there is hindrance, if it feels like, when you try to focus on one thing, it sort of shadows the other. In this case, you know, the health manifestation being something that is, um, if I only imagine health for myself, I'm more successful, but then I can't seem to progress in other areas. So when it comes to multiple desires, there are a few ways that we can approach it. I mean, I think virtually everybody has multiple things that they would want to see manifested in multiple areas of our life. We tend to have, priorities. We tend to have sort of a set priorities. Like one may feel more important than another, but regardless, I think most people would say that there are multiple things that they would want to see change. So there's a few different ways that we can approach it. Number one is you can just first really go with what feels most pressing or important to you, have that be what you focus on until you feel you've reached a place where you are so solid in that that you can then direct your attention to other things. And maybe this has been the approach, but really making sure that you are feeling very solidified in that area before turning your attention to other things. In this case, really focus and emphasis on the health aspect, seeing yourself as healthy and energized, whatever that looks like for you, and making sure that that is solidified to the point where you're not double-minded at all before then turning your attention to other things. That being said, there's also one of my personal favorites, and actually probably my go-to at this point, something like the lullaby method, something like "Isn't it wonderful?" Right? Same thing, different names, but focusing instead on the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of satisfaction. Like if you can condense what you want to feel in general, and just have that be the main focus, because that is going to spill over into different areas of your life. This was Neville's go-to as well. He, he emphasized Sats a lot, but he was a huge fan of "Isn't It Wonderful?" And mostly what he turned to would just really condense it down to how he wanted to feel, and just giving thanks for that, for the satisfaction of knowing that everything went the way that you wanted it to go in imagination. So those are really the two different ways that I would approach it. Um, and just making sure that, if you do take the approach of just honing in on the health first, getting really, really, really into that, reaching the Sabbath first before turning to other things. But yeah, I know it can feel really difficult, especially if one thing is impeding on others. So I hope that makes sense. Health is wealth. Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Mhm. Go back to, is SP's immature is SP's immaturity what we created? Can we change what SP's like, their personality, their reference, etc.? Mhm. Excuse me. The short answer is yes. We're either knowingly or unknowingly creating all of it. Um, all the things that we're experiencing with other people, how they are showing up, is all stemming from our self-concept, how we are perceiving them. If we have any beliefs, if we have any story or history, we are naturally assuming about that person, they're going to show up in that way. And it's absolutely tied in with our self-concept. And we can change that, how they are showing up, their personality, that, whatever aspects, excuse me, that we want to see differently. Absolutely, we can. We change that through our creative power, through imagination, through seeing them as how we want to see them, and continuing to go to that, continuing to use that premise instead of the past, how they've shown up in the past, how we have been previously perceiving them, all of that. Yeah. But we're creating all of this. And I know that that is a really difficult pill to swallow sometimes, but it's one of the very first things that we want to come to a place of acceptance. It's going to make things insanely easier if we can really come to accept what I am seeing in my circumstance was an outpicturing from me. And if it was an outpicturing from me, if it was my creation, that means I have the ability to change it, right? Marie, with an excellent question here. How should the law shape our assumption about politics, parties, and governments? Should we actively engage, give our opinions, and even vote? Or just assume and imagine the best outcome? Thank you. Good question. Yeah, I would say it's both. It goes hand in hand. Uh, we, but most importantly, what we are assuming and what we are entertaining in here, right? If all this out here is reflection of what we are doing and what we are perceiving in imagination, then that's what we want to turn to first. This doesn't mean that we don't want to be engaged or vote or anything like that. In fact, if you are, if you are imagining things the way that you want them to be, if that is the state that you're returning to, a lot of times you're going to feel moved to take the actions that you would want to take, getting engaged, getting involved, whether that's, going to town halls, whether that's, you know, knocking on doors, like getting involved politically in whatever way, voting, of course, you will find being naturally moved to do so. Organizing, anything like that. Yeah. Yeah. But first and foremost is what we are doing in here. Excellent question, though. Hey, Missy, I see many say they just decided, for example, I'm married to SP. But when we think of bad scenarios that never happened once, isn't that a decision too? Why is it we can just decide? Um, I'm just trying to make sure I understand. Uh, when we think of bad scenarios that never happen, isn't that a decision too? I mean, yeah, yeah. Whether good or bad, yeah, we have the ability to decide on either. And that's effectively what we are doing here. We're deciding on many things, multiple things all throughout the day, but through our assumptions, right? So when people saying, they just decided, they just quite literally accepted this is how it is. That's all. And what it comes down to, it sounds very simple. It may not always be that simple in execution, but we are just deciding. We're doing that anyways in every area of our life. We're ultimately just deciding this is the way that it is. So we can be very deliberate in deciding for the desired outcomes, what we want to experience. This is how it is, and that's that. hmm That is our power as the operant power. And I hope I understood that correctly. But if I missed anything or misunderstood, let me know. Hey, Missy, curious about how we would revise that an event never occurred, like 3P situation or some public embarrassment. Would people remember? Good question. Good question. Yeah, and I I don't remember what video I went over uh, this specifically. I made a couple videos about revision, which I do recommend checking out if you have not seen any of them yet. But how we would revise an event never occurred. So, one way, probably my most common approach to this when I have revised things as if they never happened, I would quite literally take the memory and just imagine like I'm taking an eraser to it in my mind. Like I'm quite literally in my mind erasing that event or that memory. And this has helped me immensely to make it so something didn't even happen. And other people will reflect that. Other people will reflect that revised act. So I've definitely seen people change in how they recalled things and recall things differently based on how I revised it. Yeah. Revision's wild. Definitely check out the videos I made if you have not seen them yet. Kara has an excellent question. Hey, Missy, any tips on staying in our desired state and dealing with opposing 3D routines? I'm struggling with staying in the state of financial freedom and working my 9 to 5. Hard for it to not feel fake. hmm and as I mentioned just a moment ago in another question, this is our biggest challenge, bar none. The biggest challenge that we face in these teachings and applying them is dealing with the 3D circumstances, especially when they are in contrast or look completely opposite to what we desire and what we are imagining. This is really, really normal. Um, any tips on staying in our desired state? I would say instead of worrying about being in that state 24/7, just observe where you can, when you can, but like becoming more increasingly aware of the reactions that you're having, the thoughts that are coming up for you, the inner world, basically, what we're doing in here. Uh, and if we do become aware that we are ruminating on an old state, an old way of thinking, like freaking out about money, anything like that, once we become aware of that, it's just feedback. So when you have a moment and can do so, you want to take that moment to then, use the imagination or creative power to see yourself as you would want to see. If you are noticing feeling of fakeness, it's not feeling believable, that is where I recommend practice with inducing the drowsy state, practice with getting into that more state akin to sleep, or at the very least, a more relaxed state. The point of that and why Neville emphasized it so much was it helps with alleviating that feeling of fakeness or feeling like we're lying to ourselves. It's a way that we can begin to imagine things with just without that pushback, or imagine things in a way that feels more natural to us. So that's definitely one. If you're not already uh, implementing that drowsy state or that relaxed state, like a deeper meditative state, I would make sure you are doing so, especially for the things that we have resistance to. And lastly, I would say remembering that things can look however they look right now on the outside, even if they look in contrast and opposite to what we want. That's okay, because we know that just because things are the way that they are right now in the 3D does not mean that they will continue to stay that way. This isn't about having to try to pretend like my 3D is different than what it is right now. Instead, I am just focusing on getting used to the feeling of abundance. So, using my imagination to feel what it would be like if I had all the money I could ever want or need. What would you be doing? How would life look different? And that's what you are getting familiar with. And yes, the 3D is going to look a certain way, in that interim between when you have imagined and impressed and when it is outpictured, the 3D may look exactly the same. That is okay. We can see it for what it is and know that it's always subject to change. So this is a practice. This is a practice. This is a practice. We're going to have moments of double-mindedness. It's not always going to feel easy, but it does get easier with practice. Yeah. Francesca, hello. Hi, Missy. Heaven. What is the meaning of heaven in the Bible to meaning in the law? Is heaven our wish fulfilled? Also fell asleep trying sats again. Will this get better? Absolutely. Good question. So the kingdom of heaven in the Bible is reference to your imagination, and specifically your desired state in imagination, I guess in this case. Hell would be your undesirable state in imagination. But, as above, so below is in reference to your imagination and 3D. As above in imagination, so below in the 3D. So yeah. Also, fell asleep trying sats again. Will this get better? It does get easier. I'm gonna make another video about sats because it might be what some might say a more advanced technique, although I hate to put those kind of labels on it. But it's definitely something that we are just not accustomed to. We're not used to doing it. So it is a practice. It is going to be a practice. If you're finding you're falling asleep too soon or too quickly, I would try playing around with different times of the day. So instead of waiting for bed when you're likely already very exhausted and prone to falling asleep, I would be experimenting in the afternoon or earlier evenings, even in the morning. But it doesn't strictly have to be right before bed. In fact, that's when I was practicing with sats and getting more familiar with sats, I would really, use that practice time in more in the afternoon. And once I started to get more natural with it, once it started to feel more natural, I then really emphasized doing it before bed. So, those are my 2 cents, but it does get easier. It does. You guys are so sweet. Oh, I love this. Oh, mystical, I just saw your part 2 from your question earlier about deciding. Saying something once, how is it a guarantee it would leave an impression if we just decide once? Well, we know that something is impressed because we'll start to think from that premise. We'll start to naturally think from that premise, or at the very least, we'll stop noticing resistance to that premise. So you can absolutely imagine something once and have it leave that impression. That can absolutely happen, especially if it feels like there's no resistance to that. Um, yeah, I mean, we do it all the time. Mhm. Nice to see all of you. Hi, Missy. How can we naturally start feeling and believing that manifestation is a natural process and that this world is a better place and it's okay to relax in general? Good question. That's a really good question. How can we naturally start feeling and believing that manifestation is a natural process? I mean, I think the most important way is to just start to observe it in your world. Like how naturally and effortless something is imagined and outpictured. And again, when we are aware of what we are doing internally, when we become more increasingly aware of all of the things that we are entertaining and musing on, ruminating on, we will see it. We will see the relationship. We will see that something that was once imagined, something that was once a feeling or a thought, now it's outpictured. Now I see it out here. And- Oh, think we froze for a second. Sorry, guys. Are we back? I think we're back. Sorry about that. So, yeah, basically, we want to, and this is why, once again, I stress the importance of self observation. Not that we have to constantly police our thoughts or be like, obsessive about every thought coming through our mind, but just naturally in your day, have some check in times. Why a daily meditation practice is going to quite naturally help you to become more aware of what we are doing and break us out of the autopilot that we've been stuck in. Yeah. So, and how can we, let me go back to your question. Hang on. Where was that? There we go. And that this world is a better place and it's okay to relax in general. Well, I mean, I think the part about relaxation is going to be important regardless of manifestation or not. Learning to um, learning how to relax, like introducing some exercises and practices to help naturally get into a more relaxed state is going to be beneficial for a myriad of reasons, not just relating to manifestation, but because we don't want to feel anxious ideally. And if we're feeling a constant state of anxiety, relief from that would be practicing with getting inducing a relaxed state. And that's just something we should be wanting to do for ourselves anyways, right? Yeah. Missy, how can we change our state when we wake up in an anxious, worried, or fed up mood? Oh, good question. Yeah, and I know in the moments where we're feeling very anxious or just in a state that is not ideal, number one, it can cause us to panic because we don't want to manifest anything from that state. But I think the most important thing is don't try to will it. Don't try to force yourself to be in a better mood. We don't need to suppress it. We don't need to do anything like that. Take what we are feeling as feedback. If I'm waking up in a mood, feeling anxious, well, what was I taking with me into sleep the night before? That window before bed is a really, really, really important one. Um, but also, we have exercises or things that we can do to help alleviate anxiety, right? Breath work, body scanning. If you are laying in bed, that is a great place where you can just naturally scan for areas of tension in your body and just deliberately try to relax that. Try to give yourself a moment to, whether that's putting on a meditation tape, a favorite meditation tape, something, music to help you relax. There are a myriad of ways that we can, try to alleviate some of that anxious feeling, but it's just feedback and it is normal. And as long as we're not trying to fight it, as long as we're not trying to like will it out of existence, it will naturally subside. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Kelly. Good to see you. Hi, Missy. Can I announce what I want to manifest? For example, if I told my mom what I'm doing and explain manifestation, does that negate Neville's quietly assume it to be? Thank you. Good question. So if your mom is open and receptive to it, then absolutely. What Neville was referring to in like quietly assume was we want to be mindful that if we are feeling fearful, if we are feeling doubt or second guessing, that can reflect through other people. So others can, express and say things that is basically our doubt pushed out, and it could discourage us. Like, people trying to dismiss us or, giving us the advice that we don't want, telling us things that we don't want to hear. We want to obviously, avoid that. And if that means, you know, keeping to yourself and quietly assuming, just walking as though you are who you want to be, then that's what we do. Because we don't want anything that could be potentially triggering or upsetting for us, like somebody telling us that this is all bogus or just things that we don't want to hear, basically. But if your mom is supportive and encouraging and you feel like she could be a source of just that encouragement, then do it. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Missy, I did revision on a traumatic event and really felt the new memory. After I had a horrible nightmare. Is this a clearing of past beliefs? Good question. I mean, it certainly can be. It's not uncommon to have bad dreams or nightmares come up, especially after we've done, like what you described, like we've revised something significant, imagined something significant, and then we may notice a bad dream or a nightmare come up for us. That happens quite often. It happens quite often. And I guess in a way you can say that yes, some stuff is coming up to the surface, old stories coming up to the surface. You can revise dreams just like you can revise the 3D, which is, that's really what I would recommend. Don't let it discourage you. Don't let it freak you out. This is normal. And you can revise. You can revise dreams just like you can with a 3D circumstance. So, yeah, you are good. Let me see if I'm a spot. Hi, Missy. Can you tell what I should do? Should I focus on something not happening or should I just focus on my end result? And how to not get triggered as that thing is really in my face. Yeah, I know. Yeah, as I mentioned a moment ago, it can feel really, really, really challenging. In fact, probably the most challenging to all of this is imagining despite the circumstances. When the 3D looks opposite of what we want, what we desire, it can feel very disheartening. Yeah, that is normal. Always, when in doubt, focus on the end. Always, when in doubt, go to that end. So, whatever that looks like for you, whatever that feels for you. So instead of focus on something not happening. Yeah, I would go to the end because the end result is naturally going to include a certain unwanted thing not happening, if that makes sense. Like that's going to be a natural part of the bridge of events. So yeah, and how to not get triggered? I mean, that comes through the change in self. As we recondition our self-concept, as we become more familiar with being the version of us that we want to be, as that becomes more of our new normal and feels more natural to us, we will not be triggered by things that were once triggering to us. So I guess that part is the natural byproduct of going to the end. If we are triggered by something, we revise it. But, in that moment, there's not really anything we can do to try to will it away, if that makes sense. No. Is the gang here? Believe a lot of the gang is here, a lot of familiar faces. When you're manifesting a new relationship, so you don't know them yet or how they look, how do you imagine them in the imaginal act so it doesn't feel like fantasizing? Good question. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember, I believe I've made a video talking about this in more detail. For people that we haven't met in 3D, we don't know what they look like per se. So, how do we imagine them? Well, we don't have to imagine that person specifically to imagine the outcome we desire. The imaginal act just has to imply that we are who we want to be or that what we suggestion that I try to give and how I often imagine things such as conversations with people, right? So in this example, I could be having a conversation with one of my best friends, a good friend of mine, and just talking about, this incredible person and how we've hit it off. They're absolutely amazing. Um, I haven't felt this way in so long. Things like that that you would be doing in the 3D anyways, right? So you don't need to necessarily see the face of that person to imply that you are in a relationship, a desired relationship. It could be you wearing a wedding ring and somebody complimenting you on that ring. So there are many different ways that we can get creative with this, even if it's somebody that we don't know in the 3D. Yeah. Danielle, I need to figure out what is going on with that. Make sure that that gets sorted today. Sincerely apologize. Can you talk about releasing resistance or feedback that's only in your mind? Like not in 3D, just the thoughts. Releasing resistance around your thoughts. Um, and again, this is where with a meditation practice and through self-observation, you're gonna naturally become more increasingly aware that your thoughts are not you. You are not your thoughts. We hear that phrase a lot, but it may not be the easiest to believe it because we have been so wrapped in this self concept. Like we have identified so much and for so long our thoughts that we just instinctively and unconsciously react to them. That subsides the more that we begin to just observe it from the place of the observer and really begin to see that We are not any of the things that we are thinking or ruminating on or any of that. Um, so that's a way that you're going to naturally release resistance around the negative thoughts, the intrusive thoughts, things like that. We don't need to try to force a change in that moment to our thoughts by like flipping them repeatedly or suppressing them. If that works for you, you can do that if it is genuinely helpful. But for me, um, suppression never ever helped anything in the long term. So just the practice of observing them from the place of awareness and saying, like, you will naturally start to see these are just thoughts. They have no power. They genuinely do not have power unless I give the power to those thoughts. Mhm. Can you talk about revision of, say, like body pain when you don't know when it started? Good question. So, even if you don't recall, like if you're experiencing physical pain or anything like that, or illness or whatever that can be, even if you don't know where it started, you can imagine, excuse me, some water. You can imagine that or revise that you've always felt great. You've always felt healthy. Like if you're in imagination having a conversation with somebody and you're talking about how you're very grateful that you've always been in good health, that you've never thankfully run into any issues, that is revision effectively. So playing around with anything like that, you don't have to go to the very first time or know the very first time that something happened to revise it. Yeah. And if you haven't seen my videos about revision, I've come up with a couple, but I do talk about these things in more detail. So definitely check out the videos on revision. I think there's like 3 of them. Um, those you will find those really helpful. Yeah. When is one-on-one coaching going to be available again? Soon. Soon. Probably in the next week or so. Yeah. Still getting caught up with everything. Just about caught up with everything, thankfully. But I will make an announcement when the waitlist is about to open up. So definitely make sure that you are signed up on that waitlist so you can be first to know. It's Monday here in Australia. Happy Monday to my Aussie friends. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you here. And thank you. Can you make a law of assumption beginners basics 101 video? Because I'm quite overwhelmed with all this info. Understandable. Understandable. Yeah, I know it's got to feel incredibly overwhelming just with how much information is out there these days. Yeah, and I have made a introduction video. I don't remember the title of it, unfortunately, but basically going over the basics. I will be coming out soon with another video, kind of just stripping everything back to the basics. But I do have a playlist already, my manifestation fundamentals playlist, just going over the important concepts and things to know. So definitely check that out if you have not seen it yet. Um, I know it's overwhelming. I know. I do have a video I'll be coming out with soon to kind of strip all of this down into the most basic and simple ways that we can we can digest. Missy, your last video was amazing, but you said in Satch you feel a warm and tingling feeling. When I'm deeply relaxed, I feel like tons of bricks, immobile and heavy. Is that also normal? Yes. Yes, that is also normal. Yeah. The experience is going to be different depending on where you are in the I guess sat session. At first, when I'm immobilizing, I will also feel very heavy. My body will feel very, very heavy. Then it kind of progresses to a point where I don't feel my body at all. Like, I'm just pure consciousness. I'm just pure awareness. Um, so there's, like, when you start to get into the scene, like, you'll start to feel lighter. You start to feel more the sensations that you would have in the 3D. It's going to feel like that. I hope that's making sense. Yes, it is normal what you're describing, like, very heavy and immobilized at first. When you start to get into the scene itself, you're gonna notice that you're feeling it in your body as you would in the 3D. So in the 3D, in that circumstance, you would probably feel that thrill. You would probably feel light. You would feel that, warm sensation spreading through your chest because our reactions do have, uh, physical implications. Like, you'll feel it in your body, just like we do in the 3D. I hope that makes sense. Yes, what you're describing is normal. Would you say we can manifest from mental diet only? Just focusing and repeating, choosing a favorable story whenever the topic of manifestation comes to mind. I feel like sometimes it's made too complex. Yeah, it can. This can all feel overwhelming. I know. There's a lot. There's like a saturation of information out there. I know it's why I started my Neville lecture series to kind of try to go back to what Neville said in his words, and not that he is the be all end all. His teachings are ancient teachings that go back thousands of years. But when it comes to what I have experienced and the transformations I have seen in my life, Neville Goddard really was, who helped me more than anyone. Not that he was the only one who helped, but um, when you can you manifest from mental diet only? So I think what you're meaning to say is affirmations, right? Focusing and repeating, choosing favorable story. I mean, that is one way you can. There are many ways that we can create, and this is sort of an exploration as to finding a way that feels most natural to us, that will allow us to feel that wish fulfilled state, how we would want to be feeling. So if focusing and repeating that story, letting yourself get really immersed in it, really saturated in that feeling, yeah, 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 feeling is truly the secret. Uh, so just as long as it's helping you to really and genuinely feel into that state. But yeah, there's no one right and exact way that we have to go about this. I know we probably wish that there was just one, two, three step that you can take. Everyone's going to be different. Good morning, Missy. I'd love to hear what you think Neville would say about jealousy. Is it simply desire and evidence of another state? Or what do you think about this topic of jealousy? Thank you. Good question. And Neville did uh, touch on the topic of jealousy in a few of his lectures and books. When we are feeling jealous of someone or something, it's it's basically a guise, or we're not feeling good enough, I guess, for lack of better words. It's stemming from maybe an insecurity or inability to really get into that state and feel secure and confident in how we would want to feel, if that makes sense. Uh, it also points to maybe we don't have the understanding of everyone is you pushed out, or maybe the full belief, because to be jealous of another implies that they are somehow better. Um, and if we assume that, then that may be the experience that we have. We may experience somebody showing up better than us, but we can change that. We can change that in here, just like with everything else. So jealousy is it's feedback. It's all feedback. How we are feeling, how we are reacting, it's all feedback telling us what we are naturally believing and assuming. So, in that case, if I'm feeling jealousy over somebody, I want to inquire about that. I really want to sit with why am I feeling this way? Well, and remember that everyone is truly us pushed out. So I can be the person that I want to be, that I am envious in others. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I should probably do a video on that one too. And we're talking about the sign of Pisces. Is that I guess we are in Pisces season, aren't we? Astrology's still fun. It's still cute. Is it better to pick one manifestation at a time, or can we create a vision for our whole lives? Either. Either. Yeah, whatever kind of feels more natural or resonant for you. Yeah, either or. But if you know the vision of what you want your life to look like, my personal opinion, you can go with that. On my spot. Yes, I will check the caption setting. I guess my lives are not showing up with the option to have captions. Yeah, I don't know why that's happening. I'll make sure that that goes and gets fixed right after this. Where was my spot? I am in Barbados. That's right. A bit unrelated, but do you ever read history on certain people and see how their beliefs manifested events for them? Like how Alexander believed he was God and became one of history's greatest generals. Mm, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm a huge history buff, but both my husband and I are huge history buffs. You will absolutely see the parallels in their self concept, this person's self concept, and what ultimately played out, everything that I pictured. You'll see it everywhere. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it ever. How do I not live in the 3D when manifesting an appearance change? It's hard to ignore when you see otherwise in the mirror. I'm living in the end and try to avoid the mirror, but still see no change. Yeah, again, I really need to cover this topic in more detail because I know that this is where the struggle lies the most. How do we navigate and deal with the 3D when it appears opposite of what we desire? And to be clear, it's not that we it's not that we say, how do I not live in the 3D? Because we're always living in the 3D. We have these physical senses that are telling us, the experience that we're having out here. So it's not about trying to actually ignore or put our head in the sand or try to lie to ourselves about what the 3D looks like. And I made a video about this recently. If you type in the search bar, like ignoring the 3D Missy Renee, that should pop up. But this is not about like quite literally trying to ignore it. But ignoring the 3D means that we don't accept it as final. We don't accept what the physical impressions are saying or what the physical senses are dictating. We don't accept it as final because the 3D is always subject to change. Always subject to change. That's what that means. So when it comes to anything at all, even an appearance change, whatever that might be, even if we do see evidence that we don't want, it's understanding that this is an old outpicturing. Everything in the 3D currently is the outpicturing of past beliefs. It's just expressions of things that were once impressed. That's the law in a nutshell. So we're not actually trying to ignore it, as in, you know, be oblivious to it, just that it's not final. And that if we continue to go back to what we want to be and experience in imagination, if we use that creative power and get ourselves more and more normalized with the state that we desire to experience, that is what has to ultimately be outpictured. And it this is a practice. This is a practice. This is a practice. I will make another video going into more detail about that. Hi, Missy. I know that you're a big fan of revision, but would acknowledging the past but imagining moving into a positive direction instead of focusing on the past be more effective? Good question. It's a common question that I get. And I mean, if you find that this approach works better for you, I'm certainly not saying that revision is an absolute requirement, but the thing is, we are very much prisoners of our past. And what I mean by that is our current beliefs and assumptions are held up by the evidence of our past. So, and we tend to spend a lot of time instead of being present or, in a state that we desire, we tend to a lot of times fixate on the past or you know, anxiously ruminate on outcomes in the future. And that anxiety about the future stems from our experiences of the past. The past influences us way more than we realize. And we spend a lot more time than we realize in our past. So the point of revision is to reshape those memories. It's to reshape the past so that we are no longer being held back by it effectively. Like the beliefs, the assumptions, our reactions will naturally change if the evidence from our past is more ideal. I hope that makes sense. I know that there's natural fears and apprehensions around revision, mostly because we don't like the idea of revisiting things that were not good. But unless we deliberately recall an event and revise it, it's going to stay on that, like, and we're going to continue to likely manifest from those past events. Yeah, I hope that made sense. So while it is not absolutely required, if you do find yourself in the day to day worried about your past or going back over past events or feeling like your current thoughts and reactions are stemming from past beliefs, which they are, I do recommend it. Yeah. I love revision. Revision is legit. It's legit. Once we get the hang of it, so good. So good. Hi, Misty. Can you better explain what Neville meant or what Neville was talking about when he mentioned this weird breathing pattern he'd do that led to an explosion of his cells? I hope you know what I'm talking about. I do. I do. The explosion of the breath. Yeah. And what lecture? I forget the lecture. He talked about it in a couple lectures, actually. Um, basically, and that was one way of teaching SATs, one way of like approaching it, that we can kind of get ourselves worked up to a buildup and an explosion or like that feeling of ultimately satisfaction. I should make a video talking about that because I'm blanking on the first lecture where he explained it. But yeah, he's talking about one approach and one way to utilize that, basically. Because, I mean, eventually it should build up to that feeling, he used the word explosion. He was also had a way with words. The feeling of ultimate satisfaction, the feeling of ultimate relief, whatever that desired feeling is. So it's more of like a build up to that. Yeah, I got to make a video talking more about that. Hey, Misty, I'm manifesting my SP and saw a huge movement. They haven't fully conformed yet, but they will. I applied for a job closer to them, but struggle to focus since my mind stays on SP. Now what? Manifesting my SP and saw a huge movement. Good. Good, good. They haven't fully conformed yet, but they will. Closer to them, but struggle to focus since my mind stays on SP. So, I guess as far as what to do from here, I mean, we continue. If you're noticing a lot of difficulty with turning your attention to something else, like if your mind is going back to SP and over again, um, it may, depending on what those thoughts are, it might be indication that you want to get yourself back into that wish fulfilled state until you naturally will get the sense of dropping it. Like once you reach that impression stage, like once impressed, once you reach the Sabbath, you're no longer going to fixate on it. You're naturally going to drop it because it's done. At that point, there's nothing left to do because it is already done. Then it's just letting the world rearrange itself in whatever way it needs to rearrange to come to pass. Um, so if you're still noticing a lot of fixation on them, it could just be that you want to go to the end until reaching that Sabbath. And the Sabbath is that natural state of completion. It's the state of rest and knowing that there's nothing left that you need to do. It's already done. And you're going to naturally no longer be thinking about them all the time. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. Hey, Missy, I hope you're feeling better. I am. Thank you. Revision. How do you know when it's actually been revised? Does the 3D confirm, or do I just keep trusting it is done without seeing change? Thank you. Good question. You'll know that you have successfully revised because when you think about that memory, when you go to recall it, it's going to be the new and revised memory that pops up. That's going to be the first thing that comes up. That's what's going to feel more natural to you. So it's not about waiting for the 3D to conform. It's about how you are how you are feeling about it, right? Does the new memory feel more real to you, or does it still feel like the old one is coming up a lot? And that's what you are identifying with. We might still remember that old story or that old memory, but it's going to be really disconnected. It's almost as weird as it sounds. It's almost like it's a memory of somebody else. Basically, you're no longer going to identify with it. That's how we know. So we want to revise until it's no longer the old memory that's coming up for us or that we resonate with. It's the new one. And inevitably, yes, the 3D will absolutely conform to that, but we don't need to wait for the 3D to conform. Is the proof that we've done it right is what we're doing in here. Well, thank you guys. Hello, Shannon. Hello. Good to see you here. Where are the cats? The cats are downstairs causing mischief. I'm trying to keep them off this floor for right now. My husband's actually wrangling them because after this, I got to go sanitize and disinfect the kitten nursery because it is almost kitten season, and that means there will be babies here soon. Yay! Gonna be a lot of work, but a lot of fun. That and emails is pretty much my afternoon, but yes, there will be cats in mischief and more babies in the near future. Hey, Missy, question for you. Do you personally find affirmations effective? That is a really good question. I've talked about this before a couple of times, but when it comes to affirmations, to be abundantly clear, many people have used them with great success. I've used them with success. They can absolutely work, but I've actually been trying to explain a little bit more my thought pattern. I'm personally more of an advocate for using any technique to help you achieve that feeling state. So if it is aiming or if it is getting you to that feeling state, like genuinely helping you to feel that end state, then absolutely. But if we're talking robotic affirmations or just saying a phrase over and over again, um, let me try to give an example of what I'm trying to get at here. Affirmations will work because we're effectively distracting ourselves. Robotic affirmations, just saying a phrase over and over again, it works as a distraction. So we're not fixated on the things that we don't want. We're not ruminating on terrible things. So in that sense, it can be very, very helpful, naturally. Um, but what I found in my experience is that as soon as I stop affirming, as soon as I'm no longer giving all my attention to the affirmations, um, and kind of going back to my day to day, I will find myself falling back into old habits and old ways of thinking because, at least for me, it wasn't genuinely helping me to change my beliefs. Like, if anyone has watched my SP success story video, I did successfully manifest him back. But as soon as he came back and I was no longer constantly affirming, the insecurities came back, the doubts came back, all that stuff started just coming right back. And of course, history repeated itself. So I would say if it is genuinely helping you to a feeling state, is feeling is truly the secret, right? We're aiming to change the beliefs and assumptions. We're aiming to change how we feel in our self concept. Like that is ultimately the objective here, no matter what you are desiring to experience. So while it can be a helpful distraction and not allowing ourselves to like ruminate on all the bad things, if it's not helping you to actually feel a change within you, maybe play with the affirmations so that they do resonate more, so that they can help you to capture that feeling, or getting into a relaxed state and affirming in that more relaxed and drowsy state where things will feel less effort. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. Hello, Missy. I often hear I can have anything without doing anything to get it. That seems impossible to me. Say I want a muscular physique. I have to do something to get that, right? Thanks. Good question. Excellent question. Um, and I actually do my next video coming out is about action, taking action, inspired action, all of that, because this is a very common thing that we get hung up on. Um, yes, it is true that we can experience anything that we want without like taking the conscious action or like willing it to be. What you're going to find is that as you continue to go to the end, as you continue to condition yourself in here, you will be naturally moved or something will happen naturally. Like you're still going to likely take some kind of action, but it's not going to be forced. It's not going to be, you trying to do something through sheer willpower. So in your example, you want to get a muscular physique, if you allow yourself to go to the end and see yourself in your desired body, imagine people complimenting you, basically having the experience in here, you will find that you may be just naturally moved, naturally more motivated to go to the gym, naturally inspired to start eating better, it's not going to feel forced. It's not going to feel like you're trying to make it so, or there's a lot of that tension, right? It's going to happen in a way that feels most natural to you. It might be that your body starts to just naturally shed fat and form muscle. But again, if you have a hard time believing that, understandably, if you have a hard time accepting that to be true, it could show up in a way that is you naturally feeling moved to do something without resistance. I hope that makes sense. So we can have anything. We don't have to lift a finger to make it so, but that doesn't mean that we won't lift a finger to make it so, right? It just means that I don't have to exert my will onto it. But yeah. Hey, Missy Love from Paris, France. Hello. Bonjour. And good evening. Thank you for being here. What about affirmations? The principle is that when you look into the 3D and ask, why is X not here? You get yourself into the state of not having. So why not use, why do I have X instead? So yeah, affirmations, basically affirmation in the form of a question. I mean, again, the techniques are tools to help us capture a feeling. So it's not the technique itself that's going to make it happen or make it so. It's helping us to get to a feeling state. It's just a tool to help us with going to the end, basically. So if you find that affirmations are helpful in doing that, then you'll likely find them to be effective. Is it okay to give up on your manifestation when I don't want to? You mean if you still have a desire for something, but feel like giving up? I'm never gonna encourage people to give up on your dreams and your desires. I'm not gonna do that. That goes against my entire philosophy. However, if you are feeling burned out, if you are feeling like you need to take a break or take pause to allow yourself to, you know, recharge, rest up, not feel so stressed about all of this, then absolutely I would do that. You know, I'm always going to be an advocate for prioritizing your mental health above all else. If we create who we are, then our mental well-being has to be the priority no matter what. So, taking a break or giving yourself some breathing space, if that is what you need in order to get to a place that feels better, feels calmer, if that is what's needed for you, then do that. That's not the same as giving up on what you want. I mean, even if we give up on it, we're still probably going to desire it. Yeah. ChatGPT. Somebody had a question about ChatGPT. Lost my spot. Damn it. I got time for maybe one or two more questions. So there's a couple people are asking about ChatGPT, and can we use ChatGPT to help us come up with a script or, aid us in any way? And sure, yeah. If you find it helpful, if using ChatGPT to help you outline a scene or a script or anything like that, why not? Why not? Once again, it's another tool. The techniques are tools to help us capture the feeling, the embodying, the being who we want to be and what we want to experience. So yeah. I'm trying to revise events in the past, but they keep coming back. I don't know. It seems hard for me, like I'm denying reality. The event happened. The This is a really good point. And I know, yes, revision can seem really difficult at first because, well, the event happened and it first we have the belief that the past is fixed. There's no changing it. And we don't really want to come into it with the approach of like we're trying to change the past. That could feel very difficult to believe. So maybe an easier way to perceive this or to look at it is we're aiming to change the memories because we do know that memories can be changed. Like we actually have we have data and studies that have been done to back this up. Memories are malleable. Memories are changeable. They're not fixed like we have kind of always thought them to be. Not at all. So again, we're not trying to deny reality. We're not trying to lie to ourselves or convince ourselves this thing never happened, because there's a reality where that did happen, and that reality is always going to exist because every reality exists. States of consciousness are eternal. So instead of seeing it as like trying to convince yourself that this thing didn't happen, you're allowing yourself to entertain a reality where something different happened. So it's almost like playing with the concept of what if this happened instead? Yes, I know that this terrible thing took place, but what if this had happened instead? And that's really where you're just allowing yourself the space to feel into that in a way that doesn't feel like you're lying to yourself or anything like that. So it's sort of shifting the perception of how we're looking at it. I hope I hope that makes sense. But yeah, this is a common area of resistance when people try to revise. It feels like we're just BSing ourselves. It's not at all what we're trying to do here. Yeah. David, hello, sir. Oh my goodness. Good to see you. What about when someone asks us about a particular thing about our past that we have revised? How should we respond? Good question. Good question. So, I mean, if it's something that is not ideal, if it's something that if someone brings up something that happened that was not ideal, the old story basically, I mean, you don't even necessarily have to respond. You can just say, I'm not really wanting to talk about it. It's not something I want to delve into, and leave it at that. Um, I'm not encouraging people to lie and to try to pretend out here in the 3D. Not at all. But if you are comfortable saying like, oh yeah, this and this happened, and then just going back and revising again, or just remembering that we it may before we see it out pictured in the 3D, there may be some beats that happen. Time moves slower in the 3D, which is where the whole persistence aspect comes in. Like we must continue to assume that new state despite what the 3D is showing us. So it's really whatever you decide to do. But if you don't want to talk about it or ruminate on it, you don't have to. If you feel okay, then you can do that too. But just remember that ultimately what you persist in accepting as your truth is what will be ultimately outpictured. Yeah. Is it true that our manifestation manifested us long before, but on the contrary, 3D is always behind us? I don't get it. Is it true that our manifestation manifest? Hmm? I'm a little confused. I could see how that would be confusing. Um, Basically, every circumstance, every reality already exists. Every outcome, Anything that we have experienced or desire to experience or don't want to experience already exists. Creation is finished. In the dimensionally higher, like the 4D, what Neville referred to as fourth dimension or imagination, right? So everything already exists. The 3D moves in a series of events. It's moving in what appears to be linear time. So when we have a desire for something, we desire that because it is an experience that we are meant to have. Again, it already exists. That state already exists, which is why everybody says it's already done, right? Just difficult because we don't see it in the 3D. So if I'm understanding your question or inquiry correctly, yes, everything has always been, will always be, always is. The 3D is something that is moving slower. So that's where we need to mentally maintain that new assumption, that new feeling, that new belief until it is outpictured. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. And I hope I understood your question. Um, what did you take on Joe Dispenza's teachings? I I like him. I think he's I know he was I think he said that he had, Neville was one of his influences. Um, it could be helpful for those who maybe are more left-brained or, want more of the scientific explanations, all of that. Um, he's more of like a modern science Neville. I like him. Couple questions about can we revise? We can revise? Um, I mean, absolutely, we can revise anything. If there's a question on can we change X, Y, Z, the answer is always yes. The answer is always yes. It's difficult for us to accept that. It's difficult for us to believe that sometimes, of course. But regardless, if everything already exists, if every circumstance, situation, experience, outcome already exists, then yes. But where building faith is going to be exponential here because that's going to lead to us being less and less double-minded and better able to accept the fact that just because something was a certain way or is a certain way does not mean that it cannot change. The 3D is always, always subject to change, no matter what. And on that note, so many good questions today. You guys are absolutely incredible. And thank you so much for being here. I do have to jump off. Got a lot of things got to tend to today, but appreciate so much again. And if I didn't get to your question, something was missed, I do sincerely apologize, but rest assured, here every Sunday. So hope you are able to join next week. In the meantime, please do take care of yourselves. Keep an eye out for a new video coming out either tomorrow or Tuesday, very soon here. And have a wonderful rest of your weekend, guys. Much love to each of you. Bye.